Hey friends, welcome back to the Autry Benton Show. I am not Autry, but I am sitting in his chair. I'm Eden, I'm his youngest and favorite child. Just kidding. But if you've yet to see part one of our show yesterday, make sure to tune in so that you can learn a little bit more about the man who sits in this chair for this show. So welcome back to the show. Welcome back, Dad. We're here for part two, and we're just learning more about your story, who you are. In our last episode, we talked about kind of your early life through the Marine Corps, how you met Mom, and now we're going to talk a little bit more about what it's like moving back to Conway all the way up to now. So tell us, you moved from Camp Lejeune and the Marine Corps, graduated, got married, had your first kid, and now you moved back to Conway. So what did you do when you moved back to Conway?
Well, thank you for being here today. You certainly are much more beautiful sitting in that chair than I am, so you make you look a lot better. Wow. So I'll say this too. It's a lot easier to be in that chair than be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can really understand from my guest's perspective what it is to sit here. But yeah, as we picked up yesterday, so just had Keith Autry, my first son, moved back, rented a house in Conway, and went right to work. You know, and I said it yesterday, but one thing that was very apparent, important to your mom and me is that she was going to stay home with you kids. And listen,
dream job.
There's nothing wrong with women that want to work outside the home. I mean, I admire any woman that does, that does that, and as a mother as well. But your mom wanted to be a homemaker. She made that very clear, and also that was my dream, as well, for her to do that. So went to work. My dad had the construction business. We were, he's done many things through his life, but he had pretty much settled on that and was getting, a good bit of success in building. Had done water and sewer and different construction, grading and stuff, but had pretty much fell in on concrete. Concrete portion of the construction business was growing pretty strong. So that's pretty much primarily what, he was doing then. So I went to work for him, and started at the ground up. I mean, ground up in concrete, and didn't start at the top. It's one thing that, just Autry, you really got to learn it from the bottom up if you want to, be successful in this. So I, started out there running a crew, pouring concrete, and a lot of what our business is we do all facets of concrete. A lot of curb and gutter. I'd say that's probably my favorite thing to pour is curb and gutter you see on roadways and streets. We poured a lot of that. Sidewalks, do foundations, anything with concrete we've done, but pretty much road work, a lot of that, but just learned it from the ground up, and did that work for my dad for 20 years, but started out there, we got back, had a home, getting going, and then had our second child. Yeah,
so you had Gracie, which is my older sister, and at this time you were living in the rental, so you got two littles, you're working on a crew. What's life like with two and starting out young, and what would be your advice maybe to a family who's starting out really from the ground up, maybe pinching pennies, and your house is not, perfect Pinterest board yet, and they're just building a family together. I think there's something so beautiful about two people coming together and truly building a life together.
Yeah, absolutely. And pretty quickly we were able to do the American dream. We bought our first house and built it, and it was good. And I would say the biggest thing for people starting out is don't expect you're going to have everything that your parents have right out. You building your life, But you know what? I think some people try to work their whole life to get to a point or destination, but truly the joys in the journey, the everyday. I mean, just raising kids and eating dinner around the table, small things of life. The journey is the joy of all of it, So we had our own home, and your kids, the first three kids were about 2 years apart. I think
you got to mention 2004 was when I was born.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was a very monumental time of your life.
Yeah, so you'll get me in trouble. So I love all my kids, but had Gracie next. She was our first girl, know, and so she was good, and just. Your mom, and I've said it so many times, she was so good mother, and like it was so easy for her, so her taking care of the home front allowed me to go work and chase my dreams, and so.
And then you come home and you got a hot meal on the table and a pretty wife and good
she's
kids.
Pretty, she could cook. I mean, my wife can cook. She took care of the home front, and I just think having a good team, what you want, and just figuring it out, so and staying committed to it, and finances are always tight and tough, but we always believed in storehouse tithing to God's house, and God's always blessed us, and it's not a prosperity gospel. I think a lot of people like ruin that, to think that if you give to God's kingdom that God's going to give you everything. I've always said sometimes like this, it's kind of making the washing machine go further or make the tires go further or whatever, but God's just always met our needs, and we believed in working hard, and we were just happy.
Yeah.
Then you came along after that, and we kind of got in a cycle where, I kind of got an entrepreneur mind, and I says, well, we're going to build a house and sell it, so we'd make a little bit every time, and we moved a lot during that time. So like, I would build a house, we would sell it, but I had to sell it first and then move into an apartment and build another house. Yeah. So we moved a tremendous amount of time. So it was like from a house to an apartment or whatever. So we moved like 10 or 12 times, through those years, But I always said about this about those times is, a home is where my family was at. It didn't matter where my family was at, where the home was. If my family was there, that was my home, and I made memories there. So that was good. You came along, and you two girls being together was just a different dynamic. So we were just busy.
Yeah, we were. Busy. And at this time, you're still working at Benton Concrete, working on a crew. So kind of tell us a little bit about that journey, working at Benton Concrete. What was it like working on a crew? Did you fall in love with working with concrete? Tell us a little bit about your job.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Hard work was always just something I've always done, and I love working with my hands. I mean, hard work, even from a child, was not new to me. And I think I want the listeners to know is like, I've always worked, and worked hard, just because you might see me in this suit, most days of the week I might be wearing boots, I might wear different things, but I know what it means to work hard. And, and I talk about this on this show a lot, is the trades, like I'm not a college educated man, but I've learned a trade. I learned my trade of concrete and construction, and I just learned it from the ground up. And we do need trade workers in our world today, whether you're a plumber, electrician, welder, mechanic, concrete person. You can make a good life and do well there. So just learned it from the bottom up in business, and learned a lot of good stuff from my dad there. So.
I love that. That's really awesome. And then I remember we built our house that was really like all three of our kids' childhood home, which we lived there for a long time, and that
10
was
12 years. That's probably where we're the longest. It's probably where we thought we'd be forever.
Yeah, and that was a really special place. Yeah. That was really special. So you kind of worked all the way up until, tell us a little bit about what kind of the transition was like, from a crew at Benton Concrete to maybe stepping into a different role there.
And probably the next thing was we were growing, so then I was pretty much the operations director. My dad was the owner. He was getting into other ventures. He was starting, Bojangles, and he's entrepreneur, all kinds of different businesses. And so I pretty much ran the operations of the day-to-day and the crews, the scheduling. We made a good team, and I think my dad had the vision to start the company, but I've always enjoyed people, and I think the best thing I brought to our company was the relationship side of it, because it wasn't fake for me. I mean, like, my customers became my friends. Some of my best friends in life today are some of my customers. I mean, they're not just, they mean something to me. People mean something to me. People that know me know that friendship means a lot to me. Loyalty means a lot to me. And I'm telling you, through the years, we've had some of the best customers. I mean, I could go down the list and name them. They've been so good to us. I mean, it was more of a partnership. And so I enjoyed that the most about construction was just the relationships I built, And I think any good business, I think good churches, friendships, good public servants are people, are good relationships and build off good people.
Absolutely. And I think something that really just kind of is a testimony of your life in business and our family is truly just commitment and faithfulness to it. You and Mom, whenever y'all started dating and y'all were getting married, y'all found Langston together, which is where y'all got married, and that's still the church that we go to. Y'all have planted your life there, and y'all have, raised all of us kids in that same church, which is really special. But the same of your business. You planted yourself and your roots down deep in Benton Concrete, and you stayed there, you've been committed, and it's just been a legacy of faithfulness there. And so I think that really speaks for itself, is just commitment and faithfulness. So tell us a little bit now about your role at Benton Concrete and kind of what that has been like and what you've learned in it.
Yeah. Well, can I step back for one thing?
Yeah.
You said something about church. Church has been so important to our life too. And I want to say this, church is not your relationship with God. That's you and Jesus. You got to get that right. But Jesus gave us the church, and we did invest our life in a local body of believers at Langston. And a church is like a family. There's no perfect family. There's no perfect person. There's no perfect church. And you know, Langston's had good points, high points, low points, but we've invested our life there. And that church has added so much, and it's so much a part of who we are because it's so a part of who our friend group is and who we do life with and how we serve our Savior through the church. So it's been very important, you know. So, you know, and then you asked me about transitioning into the business next. So progressed in life, worked for my dad for 20 years, you know, great opportunity. We grew it together, grew the business, and many different ventures and stuff, but probably I knew the next step was I wanted to buy the business, and so I wanted to transition in. I wanted to do it earlier, but COVID hit, and I want to tell a very funny story about COVID. It was a weird time for us, and like your mom was always the homemaker with y'all, and so it was, I don't know what it was. So I think y'all were like quarantined from school. Everybody was doing the homeschool, so all the kids were in a home all day long. And I remember like y'all were staying up all times of the night and sleeping to like 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And I ain't gonna lie, kind of low down, I was like, man, just letting these kids sleep all day long. They're gonna be like useless citizens to our society or whatever, you know. So it rained a couple of days, and like, so I stayed home with her, with everybody in the house all day long, and it was just a full day. And a full transparency moment. We're laying in the bed that night, and I said, "Honey, I got to confess something to you." And she's like, "What?" She's like, I was just judging you hard. I was like, you know, you letting these kids sleep 12 o'clock during the day, they're going to be bad. I said, if I was here with them 24/7 like you, I said, I'd let them sleep all day long too, you know, to get some peace and quiet, you know. So we still laugh about that today.
We do laugh about that. So the time of year running your business and all the things, you've got 4 kids at home, and we're going in this direction and that direction, cheerleading and football and baseball and all the things, and we say that mom was our taxi driver. So a lot of your time outside of the office and the work day was spent at football fields and baseball fields. And one thing that I always appreciate about you is no matter what dream you were chasing or how hard you were working, you were always very present in all of our kids' lives, and I think that is so important. So maybe you speak to the man that's listening who is so work-driven or dreams-driven, but what's the importance of making sure that your family is your first priority, you know, with your relationship with the Lord, and how, yes, it's important to pour into your business and what you're chasing, but also the important aspect of the family.
Yeah, balance. I just say balance is the word I would use, and balance, you know, and just having your priorities, you know, the Lord, your wife, then your kids. I think some people get that out of order. You know, they put something in God's, you know, steps of life. You know, you can't get one thing above the other. You know, you can't put career above God. You can't put kids above marriage. You know, everything's got to fall in its right order. And when it's in God's balance and God's orders, it's a beautiful thing. You know, but you know, God's put a big dream, and I want to do a lot in my life, but I tell you what, I know one thing, I wasn't going to sacrifice my family for nothing, you know. And listen, I work hard, I'm gone a lot, but like, you know, being a good family man is important. And I would just tell any man out there, don't sacrifice your marriage, don't sacrifice your relationship with the Lord, and don't sacrifice your kids for anything, you know. Any career, and you know the truth of this, like I've really tried to tell my kids this, is 3 things, is do anything you want in life. Number 1, it's got to be God honoring. It's got to be something that you enjoy, because you could go make $1 billion, and if you're doing something that you don't enjoy, it's not worth it. And number 3, make sure it matches the lifestyle you want to live. If you want to live in Beverly Hills, better have a job that supports that. Or if you just want to live barely getting by, that's okay too. But all 3 of that 3-legged stool is important, you know. And I think if you get any one of those 3 out of balance, it ain't gonna work, you know.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true.
Yeah.
So you eventually bought Benton Concrete, and you still are in that today. And so we just see this continued faithfulness and commitment, and just, you know, you served your country, you know, you served your hometown. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the political atmosphere and how you became, you know, a public servant and really had the heart to, you know, hold an area of office. So you started out at city council. So tell us a little bit about what spurred that that dream to chase that goal.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I would say step back in time just a little bit, right? But about before I bought the business and stuff, and you know, and we talked about God's plan, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean on your sin, all the ways, acknowledge Him, He should direct your path. And you know, sometimes the lessons we learn even are on the hardest path sometimes. You know, I really did go through a very, very hard season in my life, and that could be a whole nother show by itself, but like from 2014 to 18, you know, there was just some things happening in our family. My mom and dad, you know, divorced, you know, and just a lot of different dynamics that were going on, and it deeply affected me, you know, and hard. As a grown man with a business, with some success and with kids, it deeply affected me. You know, I just went through a very dark season of my life. You know, I mean, I didn't do anything illegal or wrong or anything like that, but I really struggled. Thank the good Lord, just some things He had to reveal to me to get in the right order, to heal and recover from. And it was just a tough time for our family, to be very honest. You know, I mean, very hard. A long season, 4 years, you know. But thank the good Lord, out of His grace, you know, coming out of that, God healed me. He healed my mind. He healed my heart. You know, and I tell people coming out of that season, this is that I felt like I was a stage 4 cancer patient. That didn't ever think I was going to get my life back in order, but God touched me, healed me.
Praise God.
And I felt like I got a second chance at life. You know, and God put a lot of dreams and things in my heart. And I wanted to give my very best in the rest of the life I had. You know, and that means, you know, had the opportunity to buy the business, you know, and to serve. And, you know, I love my country and I wanted to give back, you know. And I didn't know what that looked like. And I can't tell you that I had it all written out, what it was going to look like, you know, what it was going to be. But I knew I wanted to, that God gave me a second chance and I wanted to give my very best. You know, so we moved to town and was able to buy the business, and you know, my dad made an opportunity for me to do that and put me on the path to do that. Got a great team that helps us every day, and I don't mean to get emotional.
You got me all emotional.
And so, but service, you know, service, I love my country, and got interested in what was going on in Conway, and I was going to run for city council, you know, and I honestly kind of felt like the business community was getting left out a little bit, and I wanted to have a voice there. So like most things I do in my life, like I could just blaze into it and do it, you know, and so it was a regular cycle for city council. There was like 8 people running, and so I ran, and was unsuccessful, finished in the middle of the pack, you know, and I tell this story that, you know, the one thing got political events, you know, elections and stuff, I hate seeing political signs up the day after elections. So I told myself, win or lose, I'm going to get my political signs up. So I was on Main Street that night in defeat, you know, and we were at a ball game that night when the election results were coming in. So, you know, found out I lost, but it was okay. You know, I had known that I had the most important things in life. I had my faith, my wife, my family. I was disappointed. We run to win, you know. So I'm pulling up signs on Main Street. It was about 10:30, and this was just one of those God moments. You know, I stopped and I was like, what was this all about, Autry? And I remember it was a full moon. I looked up in the sky and I'm like, God, what was this all about, you know? And I came down to 3 things. I said, you know what? I met a lot of good people. I learned a lot, and I want to do it again. So I knew in defeat that night I was going to run again. But I got to get a lot smarter and get better prepared. So we started out, had a chance to run again for a special election, and we were successful. And I got to serve for 6 months, you know, and it was great. I learned a lot, and then loved it. Met so many people, and there again learned so much. But I found during that time, you know, there was a lot of things that went on, was that the thing how I felt like I could help the community best was in another role. You know, it was at the state level, South Carolina State Senate. So that's what I ran. There's a lot of more factors, a whole nother thing, maybe another show on that. But I knew I could help my community members the most because they were asking me about roads, infrastructure, things like that, you know, liability insurance and things like that. And I knew that I could help my community and my state best at the next level. So a lot of people ask me, like, did you run for city council to run for South Carolina State Senate? And that just wasn't my story. You know, I was just learning what it was along the way. So ran for South Carolina State Senate, came up a little bit short.
Tell us a little bit about campaigning and all of that, because it really was a family affair, wasn't it?
It was. I really love campaigning, you know, and the best thing about it is the people. And let me say this, you cannot, I think some people run for public office, but you really got to love people, you know. My favorite campaigning story, I'll tell you this, I've run for city council. So I was out in a neighborhood, knocking on doors, got my literature in my hand, so I'm knocking on the door. And I went to like 50 doors that morning. It was a Saturday morning, having great success. They're asking questions. So I went to this door and knocked on doors. This elderly lady came out. She was as nice as she could be. Hey, I'm Autry Benton, running for Conway City Council, and I'd love to have your vote on this thing. Gave her my whole spiel. She was so nice to hear me, you know, gave it to her, you know, and I said, I appreciate your vote. She said, son, I'll vote for you. I'll vote for you. And I was so happy. And I turned around and I took about 5 steps. She said, Autry, one more thing, if you don't mind. I said, yes, ma'am. What is it? What can I do for you? She's like, son, you might want to zip your pants before you go to the next house to ask for a vote.
That's good.
I said, yes, ma'am. So in that moment, the Lord's always teaching us
right
humbleness.
There.
You know, don't get too high on your horse, that God can humble you in a
right,
second.
in a second. That is
people
good.
People are so great.
That is good. But it really, like, you know, you hear so much about politics, but it really has been a joy for the whole family. Like getting to go to events with, you know, you and Mom is really fun, and getting to meet so many people that now truly feel like family, which is so special. So tell us, and then you started this, you know, this TV show, which has been cool. But you really just do have a heart for people and for, you know, South Carolina and for Horry County and Conway. So tell us a little bit about your heart for still wanting to run for, you know, hopefully Senate again one day, and some things that, you know, you would like to see for South Carolina and for our area.
Yeah, well, and let me say this too. We, as you know, we're in primary season. We do bring a lot of candidates on, and let me say this: any person that wants to run for political office, whatever it is, if it's school board, if it's a state office or legislator, I truly respect those people. You know, whether I agree with them, whether I don't think they got a chance in the world or whatever, I respect them. Because there's a lot of people that will get on the soapbox and tell us how bad our cities or our counties or our state is. And it's easy to do a lot of talking, but to really go down there, put your name on the dotted line, and expose your family to that. Those are people that I can respect, because it takes some courage to do that. You know, so I always found that it was good to have a platform, to share my platform, and that's why a lot of times why I bring people on here. And I brought people on here that maybe I don't agree with. I've made that very public. I don't agree with everybody that sits here or things they say, but I will give them a platform as long as they're not a total lunatic. You know, but so I respect that. You know, because you know, this America. This is America, Eden. The greatest country in the world. We get to vote for our leaders, you know, and I love this country, you know. But I mean, I truly do love Horry County. I love Conway. People know I love Conway. I love Myrtle Beach. We've worked there a lot, and just ingrained in the fabric of this place in South Carolina. And Lord willing, you know, we are going to run again, you know, because there's a lot of things we got to fix in this state. You know, I ran on 3 things last time. You know, infrastructure. You know, so many good people have moved to this area, but we've got to have infrastructure and roads, and those are state roads that we drive on. And Horry County sends so much money to Columbia. We've got to get our fair share back. You know, I'm in business. You know, our insurance, in a way, our laws, how people can sue business owners when it's not their fault, causes the prices to rise. We got to fix that. You know, and everybody, you know, I think there was a, you know, I think it's referendum put out there how Republican voters felt about our judicial system. We got to fix the way we elect judges in this state. And there's lots of different proposals and ideas, and as anybody that's watched the show, there's different thoughts on that. But the one thing that most Republicans agree in is the way we do it now is not good. You know, only South Carolina and Virginia elect our judges through the legislature. There's got to be a better way to do that. So many things I'm passionate about. But you know what? Even if I'm not in elected office, I think the one thing I want people to know is that whether I'm elected or if ever elected, I'm going to give back to my community.
Absolutely.
You know, and hopefully, you know, this show has been a platform to expose a lot of good and a lot of good people that are doing good, and I'm going to continue to do that.
Absolutely.
As long as people keep tuning in.
Yes, absolutely. It reminds me of the story that you told our family whenever you wanted to run for city council about somebody who said something to you at church and put their hand on your back. Tell us a little bit about that story. Yeah,
that's true. You know, and kind of, you know, people nudge you along the way, and you know, it's kind of like going in the Marine Corps. I wish I could tell you that was my story, but I remember first coming back, you know, a good, godly man I really respect, Tommy Sutherland Sr., put him back and said, Autry, we need good people to run for office, you know. And in that moment, I had just gotten back here, and I was like, I love my country, Mr. Tommy, but that's not me right now. But he was speaking into my future that one day I would, you know. But you know, and I think I encourage anybody out there that's listening, if there's a young person out there that's interested in you know, politics and stuff, and you know, it is a tough sandbox at times, but it is so worth it, and this country is so worth put yourself in that space to do it, so.
Absolutely, and especially getting the younger generation involved too, like with you being, in politics now and being, a public servant and having the TV show and us getting exposed to so much now, it is, really put a burden and fire on me and Lawson and our siblings, to learn more about politics and to know, just because I know one name on that voting screen doesn't mean, that's the person that I'm going to vote for, but truly understanding who you're voting for, what they believe in, and all that is really important. And so getting, the younger generation involved in politics is super, super important. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I would. Thank you for saying that. I'm probably not going to get this statistic right, but I think it's something like only 13% of registered voters vote, or 13%. Gosh knows, and how our founders fought so hard for liberty and to be in this place. For women, I think about ladies, how hard they vote to have the right to vote, and then they don't even take advantage of it now. Whoever you vote for, just vote. But primaries matter. That's where most in South Carolina, where our leaders are chosen then, because we're a heavily Republican state, thank goodness, but it really does matter.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time. So let's just have a little fun moment. So who is Autry Benton behind the TV camera? Who is he when he's not at Benton Concrete working? So tell us a little bit about some of your favorite hobbies, things you love, just a little bit about Autry that your viewers might not know.
Oh man, I'll tell you something that's pretty cool going on right now is that we're a competitive family. Like, I'm 48, so like I like to think I'm in pretty good shape, so I do like physical exercise. I'm always running, riding a bike or something. So Lawson, this time last year, your younger brother challenged me to a run. And I really, we'd ate a big meal. He beat me, but he wore me out. 3-mile run, 5K, beat me bad. So I told him this January, I was like, you know what? I said, son, I want to challenge you to a run. Again, he said, sure, any place, anytime, we'll run anytime. So I have hired me a trainer. I'm preparing to run, and I'm hoping to beat Lawson. But I enjoy being with family. I'm really a very simple person, and we spend a lot of time together as family. We eat family meals together. I enjoy Clemson football. I enjoy car racing. I love NASCAR, F1. I love being outside. To me, the best weekend, I always say this, is quiet weekends with family. I like to watch a good movie. I love to go on a good date with my wife, eat a good meal, enjoy my friends, so I'm really am a very simple person, because we do live very busy.
Well, I want to leave you with a compliment, and it's this, a lot of men can get to the end of their life and they can have bank accounts that are full, their name on so many different things, but in the reality of eternity, they really haven't made a significant difference. But I'll say this, that you, I believe, one day are going to stand before the Lord, and you're going to be a man of great success in business and in politics and all kinds of different things. And, you're a dreamer. That's something you've instilled into me, and so I so appreciate that. But you haven't lost sight of the main thing, which is, knowing Christ, serving His church, and just making a difference in the lives of everyday people. And so we need more people like you. But I love you.
That's very kind. I'll hug your neck on that one.
Absolutely.
I love you, baby.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with everybody here today, and just so they can know the man who sits in this chair. I might have to come steal it again. This was fun.
I think they'd rather have you now. You've done so much better than me.
This was fun. Well, thank you for letting us. And
I
friends,
love you, baby.
Thank you for joining in today to the Autry Benton Show. Make sure you check out our next episode and all the ones that we have to come. Hope you have a great day.